Welcome to Ultramodern. This is a lifestyle and creative podcast created by Crosswalk Future Of that examines the ways that God is moving and working in today's world. To learn more about Future Of, follow us on Instagram at futureof.cw.
Hello and good morning
Good
or
morning.
afternoon or evening,
That's
whatever
right.
time it's at. My name is Andy and you're listening to the Ultramodern podcast. I'm here with a very special guest today,
What's up? My name is Isai.
Isai Moran. You're like legendary, bro. I feel
Dude,
like people
what does
know
that mean?
people know your voice. So like you don't even have to introduce yourself. Because as
That's
soon as
not
someone
true.
says something, I think it's true.
Man, I have such a hard time hearing. I haven't listened to any of the podcasts that I've been on.
Oh really?
I just hate hearing my voice.
Dude, you
know
have
what I
an
mean?
awesome voice.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. That makes me feel better.
Of course, bro. Listen to the podcast. They're good.
I will. I will.
But welcome, Isai. Welcome to you
Thank
guys
you.
listening on the podcast. We have a very awesome podcast planned for today. Before we get to the topic, I just want to give a quick update on the future of what we're going to be doing here at Future Of. We will be gathering in person starting February 27th. So that is 2 weeks from this Friday. And we are going to be gathering at Blue Mountain, and we're going to be worshiping outdoors.
It's gonna be awesome.
It's going to be awesome. It's going to be a really great time. We're going to go through Matthew chapter 5 through 7. That's Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. And it's just going to be a great time. So if you're listening, I want to invite you to come out to that. We are going to be socially distancing and wearing masks. So we're going to really stick to those protocols. But it's going to be an awesome experience. We want to invite you to come out to that. That is February 27th. 10:30 a.m. at Blue Mountain.
And we're gonna talk about the sermon. Did you mention that already?
Yeah.
Sermon on the Mount. On a mount.
On a mount.
That only makes sense.
Yeah, that's like exhibit.
It's perfect, dude. It's the whole experience.
It's gonna be great.
We're gonna be sitting on the floor eating fish and bread like they did in the old days.
Yeah, we got salmon.
We got robes. We're all gonna wear robes.
Exactly. I got my bathrobe. Basically the same thing.
We're not wearing robes. Just kidding.
No robes.
No robes.
But it's gonna be lit. So make sure to come out
Yeah.
to that. Okay, so today's topic is something that is very near and dear to our hearts. It's something that needs to be talked about. Today we're going to be talking about anxiety.
Mhm.
And I feel like that opens up the door to a greater conversation about other things, and we'll get to it.
Yeah.
But first, let's just talk about our experiences with anxiety.
Yeah.
I'll go first. My experience with anxiety
Yeah.
is not the deepest experience. I have never struggled with real anxiety, but I've had moments of anxiety, and often it feels like this racing in my mind, this inability to calm down, or to see that things are going to be okay, and that's taking the form of like panic attacks here and there.
Yeah.
I'm just like I can't function. Things are not going to be okay.
Mhm.
But they weren't as frequent in my life. But it's something that happens, and I can't tell you how many people I've spoken to that have had similar experiences with anxiety.
Yeah.
But we've talked before. Tell us a little bit about your experience
Yeah.
with anxiety.
Man, it's and the by the way, the reason why we're sharing kind of where we're at and our experience is because I think both of us have found it beneficial or have benefited from hearing our peers or people we look up to talk about their anxieties.
Yeah.
I think everybody who goes through this at one point feels like, man, I'm alone here. Like I must be going crazy. You know what I mean? And so to hear somebody else share has always been helpful for me. So we hope that it's helpful for you. Before we kind of go into my experience, I'm curious to hear like what would trigger those things? Like, did you find any patterns in your life that like would set you down that path?
Yeah, for sure. They were definitely triggers for me. I always had social anxiety. So like when I was in big crowds around a lot of people,
Yeah.
oftentimes I don't know why I would just feel it wasn't like a fear, because when you say social anxiety, I understand that some people get anxious when they're around a lot of people.
Sure.
But for me, it was more, I felt like I was surrounded by people that knew me, but nobody actually wanted to see me. So it was often this anxiety of feeling like everybody had essentially like group chats without me. Everybody was talking, but I wasn't actually included in the conversation. And when I would hang out with people and go out with people, it would be exciting on the surface. Then I would get into the moments of hanging out, and then all of these thoughts would start pouring into my head of
Sure.
like, people don't actually want to hang out with you, Andy. Like you're not actually wanted here. Like just dark thoughts, stuff like that. So my anxiety was always triggered by feeling like I wasn't loved or feeling like people weren't actually seeing me.
Yeah.
That's been my experience.
Yeah. I can imagine. I feel like I've experienced bits and pieces of that, but not maybe to that extent. But I definitely have heard like people struggling with that a lot, and know people who that's kind of when they enter into that space.
Yeah.
I think one thing that I don't fully understand, and you'll hear this trend throughout this whole podcast, like, hey, we are not counselors, professionals.
Yeah.
We're your peers and pastors, also processing through a lot of these things. So I think it's worth talking, and we should probably interview a mental health professional at some point,
great,
because I think this is an important topic. But I think a lot of us, throughout the word anxiety, pretty easily, just like, oh, I'm anxious, and you definitely might be, and those might be feelings that you're experiencing. I sometimes wonder, is what I'm experiencing like just fear or just,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
I do.
And when we throw out when we're so quick to throw out anxiety, I have anxiety. That is also just something that's clinically diagnosed.
Right. Yeah.
Right. It's easy for us to go down a path that sometimes is unhealthy, and that's not to negate anybody's fears or anybody's anxieties or whatever you're feeling, but that might be worth thinking through.
Yeah, definitely. The more you said that, I was thinking along those lines as well. I don't know if what I've experienced is true anxiety. I think that's also something
Maybe in a sense.
Yeah, but you're also right that there I don't know if it's degrees to anxiety or maybe
like a spectrum, right?
Yeah, because I know what I've experienced.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I've heard other people's experience. I've heard your experience at times.
Yeah.
And that hasn't always been my case. So I wonder how do we talk about the difference between anxiety compared to like fear?
I wish we had answers to that, but
That's true.
But that's worth. We're gonna write that down.
Question.
We're gonna ask somebody, and where's that line, and when is it beneficial to say, hey, or when is it hurtful to jump too quickly and call any of our normal fears and nervousness about, let's say, an interview. Yeah. Like, I'd be scared about that, and it's easy to throw the anxiety label on it. It might be a semantic situation of like our language is limited, right? Which English is super limited, Yeah. It might be that we just don't have the right words to differentiate between anxieties and other types of fears, other types of nervousness, but we're going to ask somebody to get back to you at some point. Yeah. Anyways. Yeah. My experience with anxiety, it's like something it feels like I've dealt with for so long in different degrees, The first time that I remember it being really real for me, it was probably in 5th or 6th grade. I would get kind of similar to you, like panic attacks, and we know that it kind of anxiety manifests differently in a bunch of different people, right? So your experience might be totally different, and that by no means is negating it, So just want to be clear about that. But man, when I was in 5th grade, I remember at night, it would usually happen at night. I would go to sleep, and maybe 2-3 hours in, I would wake up, and it's like I wasn't fully there, and it was like a weird fog in my brain that is so hard to explain. I can't explain the images or the things that were going through my mind. But the closest thing that I can get to explaining it is it felt like I was like staring death in the face, you know, like
Wow.
it literally felt like this is the end,
Wow.
you know, and I would freak out, and I would yell, I would scream. I wasn't, you know, this big when I was younger, which I'm grateful, but I eventually grew, you know, and me being anxious and scared and running around became a bit more dangerous, you know, for myself, for like my mom who's taking care of me, my family. So it was definitely really tough. And I would wake up and just feel so anxious. I would scream, yell, and my mom was usually there. My dad, at that, I think he had already transitioned. He used to work nights, and he had transitioned to being there at night. And my dad and my mom figured this out with me, you know. And this story is as much about my family who walked through the anxiety with me as it is about me, because we didn't know. Like, my parents didn't know what was happening, you know. I can imagine how scary it was for them,
For sure, yeah.
you know, to see their kid there. And when you fall, when you trip, you know, you have a broken arm, like, it's easy to say, all right, you need to go to the hospital, right? You have this issue, you have that issue. But when it comes to anxiety and mental health, it's tough. And our society is so just not, especially 10 years ago, right? I'm 26, yeah. Like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we didn't know, we weren't talking about these things.
Right,
you know, we didn't know what a panic attack was. We didn't know what anxiety was, you know? And so the three of us, my sister was sometimes woke up, you know, but she was asleep a lot of the time, but she also dealt with stuff and dealt with things with me. But yeah, we went through this together. My mom, you know, would try to snap me out of it, like try to get me to focus on other things. My mom, she's a very spiritual woman, like a woman of faith, and we would read scripture. Like, we would, hey, let's like read some Psalms, you know. I would try to catch my breath, you know, and I don't know how long they would last, maybe not too long, but it felt like an eternity. My mom probably has a better idea. She'd probably be like, yeah, it was like a minute long. But no, it was probably it felt like closer to 5-10 minutes or something. Sometimes more, sometimes less. Eventually it felt like that fog would like start fading away, and then that was it. That was it. And it was wild. What people oftentimes, we talk about the anxiety itself bringing us anxiety, but we don't talk about the domino effect that brings. So, for example, I would have that anxiety attack, and obviously that was a moment of anxiety. But afterwards, I would be anxious about my anxiety attack. So, for example, I'd be done, but I'd think, I'm scared to go back to sleep, because what if I wake up and have an anxiety attack?
Wow.
Another thing that happened, and not a lot of people know this, but I stopped going to school trips. Like, I stopped going camping.
Wow.
I stopped going my mom had to come with me to all those things for my, essentially all through junior high. I couldn't do sleepovers, right? To a certain extent, like sometimes I would, but it was always this nervous thing, right? Eventually I had to take my pills with me.
Wow.
You know, I had to call my mom before and that was my junior high experience, you know, just this fear, that this was going to hit at any moment.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand what triggered it, and I'm still doing the work to understand. That's another thing, man. Like, this kind of journey is one that takes a long time, and you just have to be patient with yourself, and really dig in deep to understand why things happen. But I can't say like, yeah, I fully understand. Right. I understood what that was. But yeah, I still don't know fully. I'm still exploring why that happened. But that was like my entire experience through junior high. And the other thing was the shame, a bit of shame, like to have to explain to my classmates they wouldn't understand.
Yeah.
You know, like a 5th grader, a 6th grader, a 7th grader, like they don't know what's happening. Like I couldn't be like, yeah, my mom came on this trip and I'm sleeping with her, because they don't know.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
so that brought so many other anxieties and fears, you know, socially, that were quite difficult. If I can share just like another story, I remember there was like this Pathfinder camp, and obviously we went and I slept in my mom's tent, and this is already, you know, late junior high, maybe 8th grade, and I got like this terrible panic attack in the middle of the night, to the point where like I got out of the tent, and so the counselors that were there had to surround me.
Wow.
So that I wouldn't like run to the hills or anything. And my mom was there, and she had to, you know, she was with me. She was trying to get me to breathe, to settle down. Anyways, the next day, it was a terrible night, man. I still remember that. Like I get nervous just thinking about it, you know.
Yeah.
But the next day, you know, everything that happens in the morning is like, after a camp, everybody's just talking about what happened last night. Oh, like, oh, this person snored, or this person farted, or this, right? It's like, that's what happens afterwards, right?
Yeah.
And then there was one person that said, did you guys hear somebody screaming last night? And I'm just sitting there, and all the counselors know.
Right.
And that was clearly me. And all the kids were like, yeah, that was crazy, you know? And just me sitting there and listening to that was so difficult, man.
Yeah, dude.
It was so difficult to go through that without any of my friends.
Yeah.
Without any of my peers. It was just this thing that we couldn't talk about.
Yeah. First of all, thanks for sharing that experience, man.
Yeah.
'Cause more than just sharing, like I feel like a lot of people can resonate, 'cause that's affirming to maybe experiences that other people have had too. Like they're resonating and have similar experiences. And I wonder, because one, I want to talk about maybe like triggers, and not to do like therapy work here on this, but I wonder how much of anxiety is something that is triggers from the past. Like I go to counseling, I see a counselor, and oftentimes the things that we talk about, it's always about the past of maybe the reason you're experiencing this is because when you were younger, this happened, or, you know.
Sure.
And I wonder how much anxiety has a connection to childhood, but at the same time, how much anxiety is, like you said, it's something that some people are diagnosed with.
It's like, I imagine for me it was a combination of several things. You know, I felt like my childhood was pretty simple. Not anything out of the ordinary. I'm blessed with an amazing family, and so I'm not gonna lie, it's been tough for me to pinpoint.
Right.
Like, was there a moment of trauma? Was there, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I'm oftentimes left with all these questions, where other people would say, yeah, I can now look back to this particular moment that triggered this thing, and I'm still doing the work to figure that out. But I will say I always felt like I was a bit more, I don't know, like it's always been kind of part of me. You know what I mean? When all this happened, obviously we started going to counseling and started looking for answers, you know. You know, some doctors suggested certain medications, this kind of thing. There was one guy who's like, hypnosis, that's going to be the thing.
Right.
And they were telling us about it, and my mom was like, we're going to go. You know?
I'm going to cut you off there.
Or I got hypnotized, and I don't know.
Now you're better.
I don't know.
Dang.
Yeah, dude, it was very strange. Imagine
crazy.
like being, how old is a 7th grader? Like 10?
12.
12? 11? Yeah, imagine
12.
being like 10, 11, 12. and just
Hypnotize.
yeah, that's not work. Or like at least even listening to like a doctor saying, yeah, we could hypnotize him. And I'm glad my parents weren't about that. They were like, no, there's some red flags there.
What does that even mean?
Dude,
like...
I don't know. I don't even understand, man. Like, that
that's
ain't
interesting.
That ain't it. But they would try to figure out what to do. But somebody said, one of the doctors said something along the lines of like, you'll eventually kind of start growing out of it, but in one way or another, it's always going to be a part of you. And I've known that to be true, for sure, because like sophomore year of high school, I started feeling a lot more confident, kind of being by myself.
Yeah.
I started being more confident, being able to go to my friends' houses, right? Sleep over, go to camps or whatever, go to class trips. Eventually kind of died down, but in one way or another, like in college and even now, like I see glimpses of that anxiety that sometimes is still there,
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's hard for me to say, this is it, but I invite you guys to do the work.
Yeah.
I actually gave this analogy the last time I was here, and originally I use it in another context, but originally when I shared this, when I thought of this analogy, or I shared this with somebody, it was in the context of anxiety, and that was the whole leak in the roof situation, right? Like, let's say there's you see the roof and there's some water leaking, right?
Yeah.
There are you have to put a bucket in, or else your floor is gonna get all messed up, and we all need those buckets. For me, so those buckets are the things that we use, the things that we do to kind of solve the problem in the moment, to make our situation easier right then and there. When I was younger, my mom would have me play the piano. So like the whole neighborhood, I grew up in an apartment complex, and so I felt so bad because the whole neighborhood woke up, I'm sure at 1 or 2 a.m. of me just like rocking out on the piano,
I know.
For me, it was that. It was like my mom would show me some food, right, and ask me questions about it to try to get my mind into a different place. Once I got older, it was a little bit easier. It was just me like sitting down, compartmentalizing in my mind, right?
Yeah.
Saying, all right, this is what's happening to me. This is where I'm at. And just doing that, going through that process was really helpful.
Wow.
Help me get out of it. So we all need those buckets. Like we all need those things that will kind of get us out of a difficult situation. But eventually, and this is the work that you're hinting at, is we have to go into the roof. We have to find the pipe that's broken.
Yeah.
We have to understand the root of the problem. And I think I'm in that phase. I'm in the attic.
That's good.
You know what I mean?
I'm glad you're in the attic, bro.
Yes, bro. I'm in the attic somewhere.
I love that analogy so much, bro.
Yeah.
And what I'm realizing, and what you said at the beginning, is that we're not counselors, and like the place like I can't give somebody advice on how to figure out their anxiety.
Oh yeah.
Like the fixing of the roof, to use your analogy. Like I don't know how much of that work can be done here on this podcast.
Yeah, I can't.
But I do have. What was your experience with like ever sharing that with someone? Because some things that come to mind. Well, now we're starting to develop this culture of like, if you go on social media right now, you'll see these really cool graphics that people post about their anxiety, like tips and tricks for when you experience anxiety, validating people's anxiety.
Right.
Which, let's do that real quick. We want to validate your anxiety.
Yeah, absolutely, it's real.
It's not just you're feeling, nervous or anything. Like anxiety is real.
Yeah,
it's something that people experience. But one of the things that as progressive as maybe we've been, I don't know if that's the right term, but as progressive as we've been in validating the experience of anxiety, I feel like there still is a lot of shame with somebody who feels like they can't share their anxiety. So, for instance, like this is not anxiety. This is going to be something different.
Sure.
And just to clarify again, the more that you share, like we have different experiences, and I think at some point it will be good to talk about the difference between maybe anxiety.
Differentiating, right?
Yeah, I think that's healthy to do and figure that out. But what I know, I talked to someone recently about I've been doing this basketball game. I don't know why I said that. I've been doing this Bible study.
It's the same thing.
Same thing, right?
I mean, it's essentially the same.
Hoop, you just gotta,
right. It's the same concept.
Exactly.
I love how our brain works sometimes.
I know.
It just kind of throws it stuff.
I feel like
Devin
my
over
brain,
there is like, what's happening?
my brain works against me. That's how mine works.
Dude, it happens to me too, bro. Don't worry. It happens to the best of us. All right, so you're at this basketball game.
I was at this basketball game. I was giving this Bible study
Yeah.
to these boys, and right now we're going over masculinity.
Interesting. Fascinating.
And trying to like rewrite what it means to be a man.
Yeah.
And one of the topics I asked them like, what is associated with being a man in our culture? And a lot of them were like, well, you have to be strong. So I asked them like, what does it mean to be strong? And like a lot of the answers that came up were, you don't cry, you don't show emotion.
Yeah.
Like when something bad happens, you tough it out. And some of them played sports, and they're like, when you get knocked down, you get right back up.
Right.
It's like there's a very to be a man, you have to almost be invincible. That you go through a season and you come out the other side pristine, right? Or not even pristine, beaten and bruised, but like still standing, right? And one of the things I was talking about was that we look into the story of Moses. Moses has like a vulnerable moment. I'm reading a little bit of our culture into this, but Moses has this vulnerable moment with God where he tells him, he tells God that he has a hard time public speaking.
Yeah.
And what a lot of people believe is that Moses had a speech impediment. He said, I'm slow with the tongue or something.
Right.
And what a lot of people have interpreted that as is like, he has a speech impediment.
Yeah.
He has an inability to form words. Maybe, I'm not exactly sure to what degree, but it was enough for him to hear, I have to lead all these people, which will include speaking.
Yep.
For him to God himself be like, this is not what it is.
And I vibe with that, man. Public speaking, holy moly, you know?
It's hard, dude.
It's hard, man. Just I know we're about to go on a tangent here.
Now go for it.
But a lot of people, maybe you've gotten this. They ask me like, how do you guys do it? How do you guys do it? Just go up there and talk in front of a bunch of people. Dude, it's scary.
It's terrifying.
It's scary. There was one time, several years ago, when I spoke at Crosswalk, that I haven't even I don't know if I've told you this or I've told a lot of people this. Dude, I was about to lose it because I was so nervous.
Really?
I was so nervous. It was actually the first service, I think. It got a little bit easier as we went along, but man, I was gonna go up to speak for the main church. So I want to do a good job, you know. And I remember getting so nervous. I had to go to the back, like where the curtain is.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I felt like, man, I can't speak, and I would try to say something, and it's my mind would do something weird that my throat interpreted as like, you need to throw up. I'm like, no, I just need to speak. And so I was in the back trying to get a word out, and I thought I was going to throw up.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, oh my goodness. And the bumper video came out, and I'm like,
oh,
Jesus,
no.
help me. And I had to go up there, and then it just happened. We just did it.
Oh my goodness.
It was wild, dude. I don't
That's
understand
crazy.
it. Yeah, maybe my throat was dry or what. I was freaking out that day. Public speaking is...
That's
Moses,
no joke.
Moses, I get you.
Yeah. Shout out Moses if you're listening.
Moses,
Dude, that is crazy.
Yeah,
I
dude.
felt nervous for you.
Yeah, it was
I'm like,
so...
what are you gonna do?
Because you know.
Yeah.
You know what it's like. Yeah, it's scary. Some people are really good at it. I don't think Tim gets nervous.
I don't think so either.
Nah, he just crushes it.
I think he's just so seasoned.
Yeah.
Sometimes though,
How do you call somebody older, right?
he's experienced.
He's experienced.
He's wise.
Tim, we love you, man.
We love you so much, Tim. Yeah, public speaking is scary. I feel like sometimes people will comment, like maybe you've gotten this too, like you did such a good job, but then from other people's perspective, you're doing so great, but then when in the moment where you're speaking,
I suck.
you're like, oh my God, you're just like juggling and dropping balls, and you're just like,
yeah, what's happening is you're thinking about, there's what you're thinking about, and then it's like there's another part of your mind that can see what you're doing.
yes.
You know what I'm talking about? Like,
Yeah.
you can think about the content, you're doing this thing, and then you can be like, oh, this person's here.
Yeah.
Right? And how am I doing? Oh man, that was dumb.
That was really- why
you
did you
can
say
like yeah, it's so strange, dude.
Dude, not gonna lie, this is just transparent, especially because this is a college age.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll be speaking and I'll do that. I'll like detach and like watch myself while speaking. And I'll be like, oh my God, did you just say something inappropriate? I'm not even kidding. Like, I'll be like, did you just say something really bad?
That's so
and I'll start
funny.
looking at people's faces and I'm like, oh my God, I said something bad. What did I say? But I never have said anything bad, like a bad word or anything
What a
inappropriate.
nightmare. You don't even say bad words, bro.
I never.
Neither do I.
What is a bad word?
I don't even know
Tell
what they
us.
are.
Yeah,
I don't know them.
Anyways, so Moses has a hard time public speaking, and part of his talking to God about this is being vulnerable about his weakness. Like his shortcoming is the fact that he can't, his speech impediment.
Yeah.
So it's not just a fear of public speaking; it's like this inability to public speak. And what was I talking about? Oh, the reason I'm telling you this is I'm going over this Bible study with these boys, and I'm showing them like, hey, part of Moses' experience with God was being vulnerable about his weakness where he comes up short.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
That's really good.
And which the reason I brought that up is because we have a culture, as progressive as we've been, it's still really hard for a lot of, I'll speak for guys that I know, and from my experience, it feels like that it's really hard for me to open up about the things that I go through, things that bring me fear, because it makes me feel like weak, like I'm not being the man that I'm supposed to be, right? Or that maybe that culture tells me to be, you know? And I can imagine if that's how it feels about just sharing your emotions with someone. I wonder, like, what is it like for someone who goes through anxiety?
Sheesh. Yeah.
Because I remember one time in high school, I had a friend who was going through anxiety and depression, pretty bad. And I'm a very empathetic person. So I was like talking to them, trying to understand it.
Yeah.
And my friend was there with us. And then after that conversation, I left, and the friend that was there listening, he was like, I don't get it. Like, just, you're fine. Like, just feel better. Like, relax. Everything's going to be okay. And I remember thinking like, oh, you don't get it. Like, it's not something you can just turn off or just be like, oh man, I'm sad, or oh man, I'm anxious. And then be like, oh, I'm better. It takes seasons, and like you said, as you got older, you figured out ways to manage it a little bit, it sounds like.
Yeah, man, absolutely, dude. And it's those comments, it's the I don't get it, that leads us to not want to be open about it. And if we're being really transparent, I think church and spiritual communities have contributed so much to this, you know.
Here you go.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, it's true, because churches tend to over spiritualize things, right? Like, everything is a spiritual battle, and it makes sense if you're talking to your pastor, right? Well, I hope not all pastors, right? Pastors have understood a lot of things, but I feel like traditionally everything was a spiritual battle. You know what I mean? You talk about, and I don't want to jump too much into this. You talk about worldviews, and in a lot of worldviews, demon possession is a thing.
Right.
And I don't know. I'm still figuring all that out. But it's easy in a certain worldview, in a spiritual worldview that is dominated by thousands of years of church and all that, to say, oh, that they're fighting with the devil.
Right.
You know, they're fighting with Satan, you know, or they're not trusting in God, or they're not having faith, or just, you know, what's that text that says something casts out all fear?
Real love casts out, true love.
Love casts out fear, something like that. And you throw around these texts in that context and think, wow, dang, I don't have love. You know, I don't have faith.
Right.
I don't trust God, or Satan is trying to get me, a demon or whatever. I am so grateful. I am so grateful that even though I grew up in a culture and a church culture that was very much in the worldview of demonic possession and all that thing, that my parents never put that on me, man.
Wow.
Because I don't know what it would be like to grow up thinking, it's already tough to grow up with anxiety as it is, but thinking, oh man, I was dealing with a demon. You know what I mean? Dude, I feel like I wouldn't be here if my parents threw that on me. And I'm really grateful for the way that they were able to handle that. But people in church, in spiritual communities who deal with anxiety have oftentimes been told, hey, what you're going through, that's a spiritual battle that you need to work through with God, with more prayer, with more devotion. And I'm not saying that prayer and devotional life and meditation and that kind of thing, that it's not helpful. It probably is, you know, but this is something that you need to reach out to mental health professionals for, you know what I mean?
Yeah, there's been a definitely, like, a real movement in the church. I've seen this in my family at certain times, especially in like Hispanic churches and cultures, where exactly what you said, when you feel anxiety or like depression, like that doesn't make sense. Like you're just not leaning into the joy of the Lord,
right?
Or you're just not praying enough,
right?
And I've been on this thing this year of like, it's important to build your foundation. So prayer, scripture, devotion, like all those things are important. But there's like a sense that for some church communities, if you're experiencing anxiety or depression or things along those lines, it's because you're not putting emphasis on your relationship with God.
Yeah.
But almost in New Testament culture, if you had any kind of physical ailment, it was punishment from God. So either you sinned or your parents sinned.
Right.
So your ailment was a direct result from your actions.
Yeah.
So one thing that made the healings of Jesus so powerful is because, one, it was saying your physical ailment will heal that, but also it's saying your
spiritual, your
connection to God is whole.
Right.
But not only that, it rages against that way of thinking of your ailment is a punishment. Because there's that story where the was it a blind man or a deaf? I think it was a blind man. Jesus heals him, and then the parents he goes to the church leaders. The church leaders then, or the priests, then call his parents.
Right.
And they're saying essentially like, who sinned, this man or his parents? And Jesus was like, neither. I think I'm hearing that story correctly.
Something like that, yeah, absolutely.
And I think we need to figure out a better way of talking about anxiety today that doesn't include like, we'll just pray it away.
Yeah, man, that ain't it. And if you're somebody who's ever told that to somebody, it's okay, but don't.
Yeah.
Hey, you know, I feel like I've lived in that worldview, you know.
For sure.
But it's time to make a serious shift. Like, it's not enough to just say, hey, you know, just dive back into prayer. And again, these things are helpful. Can God walk you through that? Can God deliver you from these things? Like, yeah, absolutely. And God has placed tools and placed people and resources in our life that can allow us to really understand what's going on, you know? I remember one of the first times that I openly talked about my anxieties, and I was at leadership camp when I was in high school. This was my senior year, I believe, junior year.
Wow.
Junior year. And I was senior year. I was religious vice president of my school. RVP. Were you RVP?
College, but yeah.
College. Lame. No, that's cool. So it's funny, dude. We just became pastors.
I know.
I just saw the whole thing happen. Like, that's wild. Anyways, I was RVP in my school, which for those of you who didn't go to like Christian schools, like the person who planned the chapels and all that stuff. So they put us with other RVPs, so we could talk about planning, about resources, or whatever. And somebody who was there was Janelle. Janelle.
Janelle.
Yeah, Janelle.
Cool. I didn't
Janelle Ringer, but she used to be Aguilera.
Nice.
When she wasn't married to Mark. Mark is amazing. Anyways, I remember talking to Janelle and just telling her about my anxieties, you know, about, hey, I used to deal with this thing and I kind of still deal with it or whatever. And I shared that and I didn't think much of it. And it wasn't until like 2 years ago here at church. And for those of you who don't know Janelle leads worship here at Crosswalk. She's an amazing part of our community. She's really cool. And I preached a sermon afterwards. She came and told me, hey, I remember that day.
Yeah.
And you were the first person who openly talked about it so confidently. And if you, I didn't even ask Janelle permission if I can share this, but Janelle is super confident. Like she's just so confident in who she is.
Yeah.
And loves herself and carries her. It's just amazing, dude.
Yeah, that's so
you know?
good.
I always admire her for that. And she talks about that moment that I had that conversation with her as being like a big deal, man. That was the first time that somebody really just opened up freely. And I didn't even think much of it. And I don't even remember that much, what happened there. But it's crazy how sharing those experiences and being vulnerable and there being a space to talk about it and to affirm it, as opposed to just like, well, let's just pray about it, or let's just over spiritualize anxiety. Man, actually being vulnerable about it allows other people to feel the love, feel like they're not alone, and that's really important.
That's so important, because although that sometimes, or not sometimes, what we're not saying is that the solution to anxiety is just being in community, but a big part of helping anxiety is being in community that understands and will validate and walk through that with you.
Yeah.
And I think that I've heard similar experiences with people that I haven't openly talked about it for a lack of experience like that. But I've talked to people or I've seen sermons where they're just like, man, that was really impactful because that's exactly what I'm going through, or that's exactly what and sometimes vulnerability is the thing that opens people up to a solution.
Absolutely.
Which, again, I don't know what the solution is necessarily here, but what we can do is just validate the fact that if you're going through anxiety, it's real.
Yeah.
And it's not something to be shameful about.
Yeah.
It's something
absolutely.
that you can open up about. And I think also, well, I don't know if I could relate it to this, but I'm going to see if there's correlation.
Yeah.
I think a lot more people experience anxiety than we think.
Absolutely.
And the reason I say that is because I think growing up in high school, I shared this a little bit at the beginning, but I've always felt like I had a lot of friends, but I didn't have any like close friends. So like I was part of like a big crew, but I didn't feel like I had that like homie, right? So it was just, it's like being in a crowd doesn't mean that you're with anybody.
Right, yeah.
And I remember just feeling that all through high school. Then really, the most solid friends that I have are you, Josh Estrada, and Josh McKeever. And I'm forgetting, I have definitely more friends, but like...
all your other friends are like, yo, what the heck, bro?
It's game over for you. We're done. But like the three people that know like the truth about my life, like that kind of friend, the unfiltered truth, is like immediately you three.
Yeah.
But I talk to people from high school every now and then, and like I'll share like, yeah, high school wasn't that fun for me. Like I just felt like I was alone.
Yeah.
But then I've heard other people's perspective of what I look like in high school, and they're like, what? Like you were always having fun, like you were part of the crew.
Wow.
And I was like, no, that's not. Like I know it looked like that, but I actually felt really alone.
Wow.
And not only that, but I've talked to people who have been like, I felt the same way. Of like everybody thought that I was so happy and that I had friends, but I just felt like nobody knew that I actually didn't feel that way. And the crazy thing is that I felt that way. My other friend felt that way, but neither of us were willing to say it and verbalize like, this is what we're feeling like.
It's like you felt like you had to keep up this facade, right? This mask of, this is what it looks like to be successful. This is what it looks like to be successful in high school, right? Which is a thing, like, or every area in your life you're thinking through, how do I appear to be good,
exactly.
How do I appear strong, or how do I appear
put together
to everybody else? That's something that, if we're honest, like all of us have dealt with at some point in our life. I know I have.
There are a lot of like memes about it too, where it's like the funny kid or the comedian kid at school, and it's like a picture of him laughing, but then it's like the funny kid at home and he's like sad.
That's really sad.
Yeah,
dude, memes are sometimes very sad and very true.
Yeah, memes are they're true. Memes are like the comedic way to share. I feel like that's the only way people feel vulnerable.
Wow.
Is like with comedy like that. Even though the sad thing is that
there's got to be a better way to express it.
Yeah. But that's the thing. I feel like a lot of people experience anxiety. Not everybody, I'm sure, but a lot of people do. But still, there's like this fear to share it with people because you're thinking, oh, I'm probably going to be the crazy one for feeling this.
Right. Bro, you said something last week that maybe is worth diving into a little bit. But you said something along the lines of, or maybe Josh did, like your pastor is not a mental health professional.
Yeah.
What did you say?
Yeah, I said pastors are not counselors.
Pastors are not counselors.
Yeah.
Say more about that, bro.
Yeah, of course. Well, yeah. So I think I've come to know this because I'm now a pastor.
Yeah.
And I know I am definitely not a counselor. So like part of my job is to guide people. Mm-hmm. But my inclination is to, or my area of expertise, in a sense, is mm-hmm. to share with them the truths about Jesus. Mm-hmm. So how Jesus relates to humanity. Right. So I feel confident in that.
Yeah.
And in that conversation is mental health and stuff. But at the same time, I think pastors are more equipped to listen and to be that vulnerable space for sharing. Yeah. But not all pastors have the ability to counsel somebody through a season. So I go to counseling.
Yeah.
And consistently, we come to moments mm-hmm. where I come to a moment where I'm like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize that I had so much pent-up history or pent-up pain in my past that is now affecting me here. Yeah. So like for relationship-wise, connected to the past, for my ability to hang out with people and trust like that they want to hang out with me, connected to my past. And sometimes with a pastor, I'm saying this from my experience, like I talked to a lot of pastors growing up, and my pastors were so formative for me because they taught me about God and they taught me how to approach God, and I'm so grateful for that. Yeah. Like, and I want to encourage, don't feel like now that you can't reach out to us. I know.
Hey, if you need anything, feel free to reach out. But we're not gonna pretend like we're gonna give you counseling. That's important.
What we can do is tell you the truths about Jesus and direct you to counseling.
But you were saying that the pastors that you met with.
Yeah, they were so formative for me because they taught me about God. But now on the other end of that, I realized like, oh, that was very good to teach me about how Jesus views me and resonates and comes close to me. Mm-hmm. But that wasn't the work of uncovering why I felt certain things, or like why now. I'm trying to think of something that's not too deep, but why now I have this fear that maybe like when I'm hanging out with somebody, oh, they don't actually want to hang out with me. Well, that a direct connection to it. That's what I feel like in high school. That's exactly where I had friends and it didn't feel like they actually, Yeah. And that work is best done with a counselor.
That is, man, hands down.
Because sometimes like when I'm with my counselor, I'll tell him something and I'm like, dang. If a student asked me that, I would have no idea what to say.
Dude, just FYI, in my undergrad, I don't think I took any counseling classes. When I started working on my master's, I took one class, and it was huge. It was a pastoral counseling class, but in essence, what I learned from that class is we don't know what we're doing. That's what I learned, and that was really important. Like how to be helpful, but also how to guide people to the right direction. Wow. Which is mostly what I do. But I remember I started working here at Crosswalk. I was like 20, 21. And the first week that I got here, I was here working late and somebody came to church. And they were going through a mental health crisis. And here's this 21-year-old listening. And I'm like, I don't know anything about this. Is like huge things that you're dealing with, and I didn't really know what to do, like at all, And so we're in that class. I remember talking through our limitations as pastors, and just know there's a lot of pastors who are actually trained.
Yeah,
like you talk about, Pastor Mike, like he's actually gone to school for this. He's a man. So not all pastors, but there's a lot of pastors who have gone to school for this, to train for this, but most aren't. And what's been helpful for me, especially when I worked in youth, is to see myself as a bridge, as a safe space. People can come to me. I'm not here to necessarily give a ton of advice. I'm a listening ear, and I'm also a bridge to a lot of the resources that I think they can help, and also to talk through some of the healthy patterns that could, at least in their spiritual life, lead them in the right direction, but not like, hey, here's why this is happening.
Right. Yeah.
Like, we're not equipped to do that, and that's okay. You know, that's okay. But it's important that that your therapy is not like your sermon on Saturday.
Yeah.
Like, you need to go.
That's so good.
You know what I mean? You need to go to counseling, man. Like, a sermon, you know, we're opening the scripture and we're honest about it, and you can find a lot of truth and a lot of things that can help you. But ultimately, you need to seek help.
Yeah, I think to calm any people, because I know maybe people who are listening right now, that's their worldview of like the place where you work things out is church.
Sure.
I think the reason why, or some importance for church, is that when you learn about Jesus and the truths of Jesus, it gives you the power in which you then are able to go and seek help. So what I mean by power is Tim used a really good term this morning at the devotional. He said perseverance, that the perseverance that comes with Jesus. I forget how he connected it, but that word is so good, that power and perseverance are so close together, that Jesus offers us the ability to say, my life is my life. I have suffered and had hardships, and because Jesus loves me and wants me to have a good life, I'm going to seek out help. I think that's a healthy way of looking at church. And
that's real strength, man, to go through that process of acknowledgement of like, hey, here's what's going on, here are my faults. That's the work that you're doing with those boys that you're talking to, right? Redefining. You think that strength is never showing weakness. Well, actually, that's the easy way. That's our easy way to cope with it. You know what I mean? To try to just build walls, to not deal with what's really there, right? To not go into the attic, right? To just coast, and not acknowledge what we're going through. But real strength is to say, actually, this is what's wrong. This is what's going on. That takes a lot of courage.
Yeah. And Paul puts it this way. He says, when I am weak, then I am strong.
Yeah,
dude. He sent a thorn in my side, and I used to boast about my strengths, but now I'll boast about my weaknesses.
Amazing, man.
God's love or God's work is made perfect in my weakness.
Wow.
And there's a really big payoff. I don't know what the term is. There's reward in being willing to be vulnerable and open about your hurt and seeking out that help.
Yeah. And by doing that, the type of community that you will create, if they're real, because there are some people who will bounce. There's some people in your life who will give you well, tough it up, or you're always being negative, or whatever it be.
For sure.
You know what I mean? There's people who, and they're going through their journey or whatever, but real good, healthy circles will embrace you. They will embrace you, and you might actually bring that out of somebody else, because we all live in this society where we just feel like we all have to come across as perfect, man, and not even when it comes to anxiety about anything, man. You know, about the way we look, about what we're doing with our lives. You know, like, I'd be the first to say, like, man, my life is not perfect. You know, like, there's definitely downs. You know, but anybody who meets me, I might try to like put together this picture of like, well,
Pastor
actually,
he's happy.
Yeah, I'm this happy guy, but man, we go through struggles, and I know you're always saying this phrase, like, you're doing better than you think you are. You know what I mean? And that feeling that we're not doing okay just comes directly from us putting up walls and not being able to be vulnerable, or not having the courage and the strength to be vulnerable with our circles, you know? And this doesn't mean that everybody you talk to, you can be like, hey man, I deal with anxiety. You know, you don't have to,
you don't have to
do that. But
everybody.
In your circle of friends, like, it's really, really important that you create healthy forms of vulnerability and support and accountability and all that. I think, dude, there should be a series on friendship groups. You know,
that's so good,
dude, because there's some, like, a lot of our friendship groups are unhealthy.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they can be the thing that are contributing to to a lot of the ways that you view yourself, right? A lot of the ways that you put yourself down. That might be interesting, dude.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah.
I think that teaching people how to be real friends is important too, because I remember this one time. I had a friend, and she was telling me like, "Oh, my friends are just so toxic, and
Wow.
like they all like, like they don't see me, they don't ask me how I'm doing, whatnot." And I was like, "Oh, that sucks. I'm sorry." And then my friend ended up dating one of the friends in that group, and he told me that she felt the same thing. That in that friend group, she was like, "Nobody sees me, nobody cares."
Wow.
And then I realized, like, oh no, this whole friend group is full of people
Feels the same
thing, but nobody.
Terrible.
Exactly, and that's I think we just need to learn how to be friends. Like,
Yeah, and it sounds simple.
Yeah.
But that's real, man.
That's
how do you
super real.
How do you be a good? I've been a terrible friend at times. You know, I have been. Andy's like, yeah, dude.
I'm just kidding.
It sucked. But I have, like, I'm sure I've messed up so many times and haven't really, you know, given the most healthy way of support, you know, to my friends.
Yeah.
And that's something that we deal with every single day. Like, we need to explore that. You might have to rethink the conversation in your mind, like, hey, am I being a good friend, you know, to people around me? Am I being a good support system, or bringing people down? Am I contributed to you know, the anxieties that people are feeling? Am I somebody who's encouraging people to put up these walls and these masks and to shape up, you know? Or am I being a safe space for people?
We need to do a podcast on friendship.
Dude, we should.
Because then how do you tell whether or not your friend group is a positive friend group? Because I can tell you I had friend groups in high school where I'm like, thinking back, that was not the friend group I should have had.
Yeah.
That's not the things I should have done. And how do you tell, like, when is it time to be like,
this is
new
good.
best friend? Yeah. Anyways.
This is good, man.
It's a good conversation, bro.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
There's a lot more to talk about when it comes to this. And I want to be clear. If you are going through this, like, I invite you to reach out. Like, feel free to. We are safe spaces. You know, we won't have all the answers. You know, but maybe we can help guide you to people who do, and resources who can support. You know, but I just want anybody who's listening to know you are not alone. And not only just with anxieties. Yes, with anxieties. If you're going through anxiety, I feel you, man. And I just want you to know I hear you, and I get you, and you're not alone. But even anything else, like, if you feel like, man, I'm alone, if you feel like, man, I'm self-conscious, you know, I have, you know, image issues, you know, whatever it might be, I feel scared, I feel nervous, or I feel like everybody's succeeding and I'm not. I want you to know, like, you are not alone. Like, there's so many people, if not everybody in one way or another has dealt with that.
Yeah.
And I don't want you to feel like you're going through this by yourself. So if you need to reach out to somebody, to one of your friends, we're always available.
Yes.
Like, just, I don't know, DM us, I guess.
DM us, text
yeah,
us.
like, shoot us a text or whatever. We're here for you. I just want to be clear about that.
Yeah.
You know?
No, 100%. This is not a one-way street here where you're just hearing stuff. As pastors, we're in this for people.
Yeah.
To be part of their journey, and we just want you to know that we love you, and most importantly, that Jesus loves you so much, and that He has a life for you.
Yeah.
That is healthy. That is on the road of being healed.
Yeah.
And that the grace of Jesus on your life provides a way for you to talk to counselors and to better your life.
That's right.
So we just want you to know that. And most importantly, Jesus loves you.
That's right.
Hey, thanks so much for listening this week. We love you so much. We'll be back next week. FYI, just one more time, we have the Sermon on the Mount series on the Mount.